Today I want to talk about intentionality, and you can use this and apply this in so many different areas of life, but I really want to focus in today on parenting, how to be intentional when it comes to the things of God. So we're going to jump into that. Hey, right before we do, I want to just share something that I heard, something funny this week. It was about a 92-year-old man. He wasn't feeling up to par, and he went to the doctor to just get a checkup. Several days later, the doctor saw the 92-year-old out in the park walking with this beautiful, much younger woman at his side, and he just looked as happy as can be. The doctor walked over to him and said, "Wow, you must be feeling a whole lot better." He said, "Doctor, I am. I just took your advice to get a hot mama and be cheerful." And the doctor said, "I didn't say that. I said you had a heart murmur. Be careful." Well, that has nothing to do with what I want to talk about today. I just liked it, all right? You know, talking about children, that's what I want to focus on for the next few moments. And this unbreakable family mentality of how do we just draw everything back in to where it's tighter and where we're really functioning the way that God has called us to function. You know, when it comes to our children, I remember Kay and I so well. Coming home with our firstborn, Dustin, 2 days old. We came in the house. We're young parents. I have never taken care of a child. I've never changed a diaper. I don't think I've ever even held a child. And now I have my own. We lay him down on the bed. We're just standing there looking at this little creature that's in our house that's going to be with us for the next 20 years. And you're just kind of overwhelmed by that whole experience. And all of a sudden, I realize I don't know what to do, and I'm fumbling through all the papers that we brought home from the hospital, looking for the instruction manual, how to operate this kid. And you find that there's not such a thing. And you just have to fend for yourself. You have to figure it out all by yourself. And it is a daunting, daunting thing when you realize that I'm responsible for this little life. You know, parenting is such a huge challenge. You think about all of the pressures that's in this generation, and every generation says the same thing, that there's never been a generation this hard to raise children in. And let me tell you, there's something different about this generation that is before us, because it's not just difficult, but it's very, very dangerous. And if we're going to be great parents, then we're going to have to be more intentional than we have ever thought possible, that we've got to think through everything we're doing, because when you look at what is in society, there's the peer pressure, there's the media pressure, you've got the internet, you've got the pressure to drink, the pressure to do drugs, the pressure to experiment sexually at incredibly young ages. And you find that there is a great absence today in godly examples. And what happens is, in this society, we just kind of get caught up as families and as parents in the tide that's moving through society. And we get caught up drifting down the tide, and we just follow what everybody else in the world is doing. And we begin to live our lives, and we begin to rear our children in the way that everybody else is doing. We're dictated by society. And so, when you think about our lives, you know, we all wake up and we all go to sleep and we all breathe and we all, have our lives. We live in houses. We have our relationships. In other words, we all have our routines. I have a routine in life. You have a routine. In our routines, we find that what we do over and over and over each and every day, that it becomes very comfortable, and it's our place of safety. And we just kind of ease ourselves into that because we have jobs that give us money, friends that give us companionship, families that give us stability, cars that give us mobility, and it's in all of that comfort and safety that we slip into complacency. And we're not really thinking through what we're really doing in life. And we're all subject to falling into that kind of pattern of life, of where life just becomes automatic, and we're just letting life happen instead of making life happen. There was an experiment that they did with rats. What they did, they were monitoring the brain activity of a rat. They placed him in a maze, and it had to find its way all through the maze, and at the end of the maze, they had a piece of chocolate. They were tracking the brain activity, and the first time they put it in the maze, the brain activity was high all the way through the maze, and when it finally found the chocolate, then the brain activity peaked. It spiked. Then they took that rat and they placed it in that maze every day, over and over and over. And when the maze became common to the rats, the brain activity subsided. that it was far, far less. It came way, way down because it was common and it really did not even have to really think through much as it found its way through the maze. In the very same way, in our own routines of life, when something becomes so familiar to us that it just becomes the common way of life, then your brain goes into a conservation mode, that your brain activity begins to come down, and it puts you into what is called the habit loop. And when you get into the habit loop of your life, doing it over and over and over again, it consists of an action, a routine, and a reward. But listen to this. Most habits are actions and routines that we do without consciously calculating the outcome. That we just get into a routine. We come home from work and all we're wanting is solitude. We want quietness. We just want to sit and watch television, and we just want our kids to go somewhere else in the house and give us that time. And we allow our kids to go off in other parts of the house, spending hours and hours in front of a television, a computer screen, an iPad, a video game, but all we're concentrating on is I just need my me time. I need my quiet time. What that means is that in this habit that you've gotten into, there's a lower level of brain activity. And when that happens, that you're no longer as creative and as passionate and as concerned in raising those kids like you were in the beginning. It becomes just this mentality of mediocrity. And then we become mediocre parents, raising mediocre children. And God never called us to raise average children, but God called us to raise exceptional children, children of God, children of influence, children of power, and children of destiny. That's what God has called us to do. And many times, we think about our family and what do I want? What do I want in my home? What do I want in my family? What do I want in my marriage? What do I want for my children? And it will never happen by letting life happen. You have to be highly intentional, and that you have to have a plan, and you have to stay highly glued to that plan. It's just being intentional every day, because I'm aware that it leads us somewhere in our life. I wanted to talk about 3 different ways that we can be intentional when it comes to our home life and raising our children. And the first thing is number 1, is our schedule. That we have to be intentional when it comes to our schedule. Because what we all understand is that we love our children in our heart, but do we love our children in our schedule? What I mean by that is that when it comes to our schedule, that there are things that we have to omit, and there are things that we have to add, just because we've brought children into our lives. When I was 30 years of age, we had 2 small children in our home, and I had really gotten into golf. I love playing golf. And every Saturday I was playing with some guys that were exceptional, and they were teaching me and showing me, how to improve my game. And the better I got, the more passion that I had. I loved doing that. And it was all about me. It was me time. It was my relaxation. I needed that break and loved the game. I can remember one Saturday that I'd left the house, and from the time that I left the house, got to the golf course, waited our turn, played 18 holes, and then returned. On that Saturday, I was gone for 5 hours. Came back home and walked in the door, and being gone for that many hours, I could see that Kay was frazzled. She was fried. It had been a tough day with the kids. And I'm looking at these 2 kids, and they're on the floor, and they're playing, and I've been gone for 5 hours, and the thought hit me, what do I want to be known for? Someday, how do I want to be remembered? Do I want to be remembered as being a great golfer, or do I want to be remembered as a great dad? It was a decision that I made that day, and I took those golf clubs, went into the garage, put them into a closet, and there they stayed for the next 10 years. Because what we are talking about here is that there are seasons of life that we have to adapt to, and that we have to understand what is really important and what is not important in our lives. And so it's just kind of balancing all of that. Now, thinking about scheduling and time, how do we become intentional in our schedule? One of the things that I'm reminded of is that I have always been a huge believer in vacations. And I think vacations are great for families, whatever level, whatever you can do. But when we were young parents, struggling financially, barely had money to survive, for 1.5 years, we saved money to go to Disney World with our kids. We saved and we saved and we scrimped, and we finally got it all together, and we went on that vacation. And still today, it's one of the most fond memories that I have of us being together. But while we were there, Kay, every single day, Kay and I were counting our dimes, our nickels, our pennies, and just thinking, can we survive through this vacation? And every meal that we ate, Kay and I, we were eating kids' meals, trying to save money through that. Well, our kids weren't aware of that, and they had the greatest time. We had a great time. Vacations are fabulous because they are memory moments that no one will ever forget. But many times the mistake that we make is that we'll center on the big events, and that's when we'll spend time together. I'm really busy now, but we'll spend time on the vacation. We'll spend time together then. And I want to encourage you that not always thinking about the big segments of time, but that we need to think about the small deposits that happen every single day. And if you can think about every day, I need a deposit into my children, that I need to be doing something that I have a connection with every single one of them. And one of the ways that we did this is at the dinner table. I've talked about this before, but I want to bring this back because I don't know if there was a principle that is any more powerful in our home than this. Kay was an absolute master at this, at scheduling. And what she would tell our kids, today after school, after practice, football practice, baseball practice, she would say at the beginning of the week, don't make any other plans because we're eating at home on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. What that meant was that's mandatory. We don't let anything interfere with that. No plans can interfere. That we all come together, that is our family time. And we did that for years and years and years. And it's where we came together, sat around the table, we ate together. It's where we were able to download our day. It's where we would tell stories and tell what happened, and you're learning from your kids what they are experiencing and what they're going through. But it was a time of fun and enjoyment, and the heartiest laughing that we did ever in our home would always happen around that dinner table. That was the environment that we created. While we're still trying to figure all of this out, because Kay and I didn't know anything about family life, we were just trying to figure it out as we went, that it was one night sitting at the table, report cards had come out. One of our kids had a very low grade, and it wasn't because they weren't sharp enough, intelligent enough. It's because they were goofing off and playing around and not interested in schoolwork. And so we were sitting there talking about it, and it started getting very intense around that table. And the voices became elevated. And now there was the loudness of the voices and going back and forth, and tension was building. And then he stands up and starts crying and storms to his room and slams the door. And this had elevated to a place that the tension was high. And now we're sitting there, and it was very, very awkward around that table. When we got up and we were washing dishes, I knew I'd not handled that situation well at all. And Kay and I that night made a promise to each other, never again at the dinner table would we ever discipline, would we ever bring up hard issues, that the home or the dinner table, the mealtime is only reserved for the enjoyable moments. It's about relationship building. It's about investing in one another's lives. But it's after the dinner time that you can go to their room, you can go to another room, the living room, sit down, and there's where discipline takes place, but never, never, never at the table. What a great lesson that was for us. Also, whenever you think about schedules, parents have their schedule and they have their life. Our kids, they have their life and they have their schedule. But whenever you think about being intentional when it comes to these two schedules, what is vitally important as we raise our kids is that we bring those schedules together and that we intertwine the schedules. And again, Kay was so good at this. And when our kids went to high school, I remember feeling like that we were sending them into a den of lions. That's how we felt. But Kay was carrying down 2 jobs at that time. Extremely, extremely busy. But she also worked into her schedule of where she would go to La Cueva and she would volunteer answering phones several days a week. And she would do that, and she did that for years. And she was working in the front office, answering phones. She knew the principal, the vice principal, the teachers. She knew many of the students. Our kids saw her there all the time. She was very much involved in their lives, in their school. She was there all the time. And so it was not only that, but she also was on the La Cueva football board. She served there for several years. And And so it was just this high involvement that we had. When it came to our kids playing sports, we never missed games. We worked hard that we were at every single game, but also something that I added into my schedule is that I was at every single practice every day. And many times I was taking my work out with me, but I was pulling up a lawn chair. I was on the sidelines. I was there with my kids. I knew the coaches. I knew the players. I knew many of these kids. We invited kids over for barbecues. We invited the football team to come after spring training to do Bible studies in our backyard, whoever wanted to come. And what we were doing, we were blending our schedules, where we did not have our schedule and their schedule, but it all intertwined with one another. Dustin made this statement this last week. He said, when I was in high school, I never had the thought of doing something wrong, something disobedient, something that I knew I shouldn't do, and getting away with it because you guys were so involved in my life. Let me tell you what that is. That is a security blanket for them and for us. And your kids, they really want to spend time with you. I just read a statistic this week that says that 79% of high school students wish they had more time with their parents. Moms and dads, you know why? Because you're their hero. Because no one in this world is greater than you. Many times you think you're out of step and you're just not cool like you ought to be. And you know what? They don't view it like that. What they want is they want you. They want your time. They want special time with you. They absolutely crave that. And so we must be intentional when it comes to our schedule. Now, the second thing that I want to talk about is being intentional when it comes to discipline. Discipline is such a huge, huge thing that all of us parents battle and go through. Because, you read about discipline and you have people that are so far on this side, you have people so far on this side, and you never spank, and others saying, yes, you have to spank, and you got all of these things. It's so confusing. What do you do? Well, let me share something with you that I think is very, very helpful, and it's the 4 stages of parenting. Now, take a look at this. It comes up on the screen, and when you look at this, you'll find that the discipline years is the 1 through 5, training years 5 through 12, coaching years 12 through 18, and then the friendship years is what takes place after 18 years of age. Now, when you look at these 2 middle ones, training and coaching, we can confuse those 2 things and think, what is the difference there? Let me explain that very quickly. Whenever you enter into the stage of training, when your kids are still very, very young, and they're growing up under you, this is more like theory. It's when you as a parent, you are a trainer, and you are talking about the values that you stand for, the values of our home. You're talking about values biblically, morally, ethically, socially. You're just talking about who you are and what you believe in and what we stand for as a family. And what you're doing is that you're just taking time. You're teaching them, telling them, showing them. It's at this stage of where you are playing it out for them. They're watching you live out what you say. But then you move into the coaching stage. This is when your kids get into the middle school and high school, they're teenagers, and what you could say is coaching is more hands-on. It's when you as a coach, a coaching parent, that you are taking your children and you are improving them in every area of their life. You are pushing them to greatness, and you're helping them to discover their talents and their gifts and their personal performance. And what you're saying to them, everything you put your hand to, everything you choose to do, that we do it at the highest level possible, that we are people of excellence. Whatever we do at the very, very best that we can. Whenever you're thinking about this stage of being with your teenager, it's that coach mentality. And you don't want to overdo this, but it's as simple as this. As 5-minute coaching with every child every day. And it's where you're just sitting down, eye to eye, and where they know that you care and you're involved in their lives, and you're saying things like this: hey, tell me what you're struggling with. How can I help you? What are your goals? What are you trying to achieve? Let me see if I can help you in this. And it's where you're just coaching. Now, let me give you 2 examples of what coaching looks like. When I was pastoring in our church was much smaller than it is now when we were over in the other building, a small little foyer, and I'd always make a beeline out to the front doors and shake everyone's hands as they were walking out. One day I'm standing there talking with people, visiting, and I see our middle son, Jonathan, who was only probably about 12 or 13 years of age. It's that very awkward social stage that they enter into, and I see him standing in the foyer. A man walks up to him, is talking to him. Jonathan never looks up, never looks him in the eye. The man is asking him questions. Jonathan is responding, but he's mumbling and barely talking, and the man is leaning down saying, "I'm sorry, can you say that again? Can you say that again?" And then he reaches out to shake his hand, and Jonathan gives him this dead fish handshake, and then the man walks away. And I'm thinking, that won't do. And so I went over and got Jonathan. I said, "Jonathan, this man was interested in you, wanted to talk to you, and you disrespected him. So let me tell you what you're going to do. For the next 2 months, you're going to make a beeline after church every Sunday, meet me at the front doors, and as I'm shaking everyone's hands and talking to people, you're going to shake everybody's hands, and you're going to talk to people." In the next 2 months, he really developed in that area of being able to look up, look at someone in the eye, shake their hand firmly, be concerned and interested in what they're saying, talking and conversing. And let me tell you, that was an elevating moment in his life. It was coaching him through that. Don't let just things happen, make things happen. Another example of coaching would be when Dustin, our oldest son, was in the 8th grade, and he loved playing baseball. It was his passion in life, and he loved that sport. Well, we pull up on the first day of practice going into the 8th grade, and this is the time that some of these young boys are beginning to develop physically. And so we drive up, and these guys, they have cut-off shirts, and they're showing their new developed muscles. And they're not very big, but they're just now developing. Well, Dustin is sitting there, and he's looking out thinking, these guys have gone from boys last year to men this year. And he's looking at his arms, and he's looking at their arms, and then Dustin looks at me and says, "Dad, I don't want to play baseball this year." I said, "What? You don't want to play baseball? You love baseball." He goes, I just don't want to play. Let's just go home. Take me home. I'm not playing." Well, I knew exactly what the problem was, looking out, intimidated by these kids that were bigger than he was. And I also realized this, that you cannot allow that to take place. Because whenever you open the door of intimidation in any area of your life, it's never compartmentalized. It's not going to be, I'm going to be intimidated in baseball, but I'm not going to be intimidated anywhere else in my life. That it will flow into every aspect of life. And I'm standing there thinking, I'm not about to let him open this door of intimidation in his life to destroy what God has for him in the future. And so I look at him, and this is kind of out of character for me, but I looked at him and said, "Dustin, you are going to get out of the car, and you are going to get out on that baseball field, and let me tell you what I'm getting ready to do. I'm going to get out of this car, I'm coming around to your side, and I'm going to pull you out of the car, and I'm going to put you over my shoulder, and I'm going to carry you to the baseball field. So here I come." And I get out of the car, and I start going around. By the time I get on the other side of the car, he's already out and he's walking towards the baseball field. He did not want me carrying him. He was very, very unhappy. He was not a happy young man that day. But what's so ironic is that he had the greatest baseball season of his life. It was just a great, great time. And so in coaching our children, that we have to think through everything. We're not thinking about the immediate, but we're thinking through all the different stages of life. Now, moms and dads, I want to go back to this first stage, this 1 through 5, because it's so critical. If you're a stay-home mom, a stay-home dad, you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about here, because when you're with your kids day in and day out at this stage of 1 through 5, it just feels like you're disciplining all day long. It never ends. And it's just over and over and over, and you become so tired and so weary, and then you start second-guessing yourself. Am I right? Am I wrong? Am I disciplining too much? And you just feel bad about it all. It just feels like that's all you're doing all day. And, you find yourself in that situation, but I want to encourage you, moms and dads, that it may be the toughest time of parenting. And it's only a season. Just remember, it's a season that will come and it will pass. But if you're in that season, let me give you 3 things that I think can help you. It's what's called the 3 non-negotiables. That whenever you look at these 3 things, these are the 3 things that you never, ever let slide. that you always discipline because of these three things. When your child is disobedient, when they are dishonest, when they are disrespectful. It's whenever they function in one of these three areas that you immediately take care of the situation. If you're out to dinner with friends, if you're at the mall, if you're in home, you don't let these three things slide, that you cannot let them get away with that. But everything else, lighten up, Mom and Dad. Lighten up. Man, don't be so hard on yourself, and don't be so hard on them. You know, one of the things that's kind of funny for me to think through is, now that I'm in the grandparent stage, is that grandparents, have you ever noticed how that they're just so much easier on the grandkids than they were on their own kids? You know, and your kids are looking at you like, you never treated us like this. I mean, they don't understand it. But you know, as grandparents, we're always making excuses. Oh, you know what? The reason they're acting like that is because they didn't get enough sleep. They don't feel well. You know, maybe they're running a fever. They would never act like that. And our kids are looking at us like we are absolutely nuts and we've lost our mind. But you know why grandparents seem to just kind of chill on everything? Is because I think that many times we as parents, when it's all said and done, or we've raised our kids and they've all left the house, that one of the big regrets that so many parents have is that when our kids were at home, why was I as a parent so agitated, frustrated, impatient so much of the time? And you know, that's the regret. And I think that grandparents have a total different perspective. Sometimes we just need to learn to lighten up a little bit and not be so intense about every little thing. But remember, those three non-negotiables, that's what we discipline over. Everything else, don't make it such a big deal. Now, another thing that parents do that they mess up on is that they don't discipline right in that first stage or in the first two stages. That they're light on discipline, and they're not holding to the three non-negotiables. Now, when their kids grow and they get into the teenage years, and now they're rebelling, and now they're not following your rules, and now they're disobedient, you come in with an iron fist, and now you start trying to discipline your teenager. Instead of coaching, now you're having to bring in discipline. And when you have to discipline a teenager at that level, you have absolutely entered into a war zone. What I want to say to all the young parents and parents of young children, that don't miss the discipline stage of the 1 through 5, because that's the stage that you're setting everything in motion, and that you're finding the foundation for your children, and that you're setting the principles that they will follow for the rest of their lives. Critical part of all of that. Another big mistake that some parents make is that they try to be friends with their kids too soon. I mean, they try to be buddy instead of being a parent. And I just want to tell you, you have to be a parent, and you have to parent them, and you're not called to be their best buddy when they're young. And I'm just saying, and I don't know how that any of us can really be friends with our middle schoolers. They're just weird at that age. I mean, they're strange, and it's hard to be friends with them. But remember this, is that if you will parent them, you will discipline them, you will train them, you will coach them, then when they leave the house at 18, or whatever age that might be, then you've got friendship with them later. Remember that, later. Now look at this phrase. Later is longer. Later is longer. What you're doing is you're coaching them the first 18 years, training them, guiding them, but after 18, later is longer. You've got a lifetime with your children. You know, my greatest friends in the world, you know who they are? My best friends in the world is my 3 sons and their wives. Absolutely, I want to be with them more than anybody else. But I'm not so sure that when they were younger that they really thought that we were the best of friends, but we are today. And you know, that later is coming, and the later is longer. You know, here's a great biblical principle for us to remember. And moms and dads, just think about this. Has there been a time in your adult stage that you have really messed up? I mean, you sinned, you embarrassed yourself, you embarrassed your family, you embarrassed your wife. I mean, you really messed up, and you're grieving over the fact that how could I have been so dumb? How could I have fallen into this? I mean, you have messed up. Whenever you stumble and fall like that, how does God view you? I mean, does God look at you and He's angry at you and He rains down judgment upon your life and He curses you and He walks away from you? Is that how God reacts when you stumble and fall and when you have really messed up? That's not who God is at all. In fact, what we understand is that when we stumble and we sin and we fall, that God comes to our side. He sides with us against our sin. That's who God is. Now, God, our Heavenly Father, He's the one that we are to mimic everything after. And think about this, that when your teenager comes home and they have really fouled up, I mean, this is a big, big deal, and they have to tell you what they've done. Or maybe you've received a phone call from the school, or maybe the policeman is standing on your front porch and telling what your child has done. How do you react at that moment? Do you get red in the face, and are you angry, and are you harsh with your words, and do you yank them by the arm, and do you yell at them and scream at them and embarrass them? I mean, how do you react when it's a tough situation? Well, we know how we need to act. We act the same way that God acts to you when you mess up. And here's a phrase that I want you to remember, that when that day comes, that this is the phrase that you will use. And here it is. Oh no. When you hear what they have to say, and you just simply go, oh no, oh no. And you walk over to them, and you embrace them. Oh no, oh no. What you're saying to them is that, oh no, I wish this had not happened, but I want you to know I'm with you. I want you to know I'm going to walk with you, and you are siding with them against their sin. Absolutely, there's a consequence for their action. But what you're doing is that you're embracing them, and you're saying, oh no. You're careful with your words. Instead of dividing the relationship, what you're doing is you're pulling the relationship together, and it will absolutely melt their heart, because at that moment, in a major failure, they need you more than they've ever needed you in their lives. We just simply follow the pattern of what God does for us. You know, when you think about discipline, you know, why do we discipline? Why do we do? I think sometimes we as parents, it just makes us feel better. We just want them to hurt. You make me mad, you know, and it just makes us feel better. But discipline is to restore. That's what it's all about. Now, you can think about, Dad, that you come home and you walk in the front door, you can see all the way into the living room, your teenage son is there, and he is disrespecting his mom. It's a bad, ugly scene. And when you watch this, he is totally out of line, and you are lit up. And you come in there, and boy, you lay down the law, and this is what's going to happen to you, and you are grounded, and I'm taking the car keys away from you, and I don't want to see your face. You get to your room. I mean, we lay it all out. And it's all spur of the moment. Well, you know, it could be right, it could be wrong, it could be good, it could be bad in the way that you handle that. But again, discipline is all about trying to figure out how to restore. And this is something that's really important for us to remember, that when you are lit up like that, don't start spouting off the punishment. Back off, because you are a highly intelligent person. And you need to back off of that for a moment and just think through what is the best way to handle this, because discipline is always about restoring. What if you handled it like this? Then a little bit later, you walk into his room. Sitting there eye to eye, you say, that will never happen again in this home. What you did, you disrespected your mother. And it's not who we are. It's not what I've trained. It's not what we stand for. It will never happen again. And let me tell you what you are going to do. You're getting ready to get up and go in there, and you're going to apologize to your mother, and you're going to ask her for forgiveness. Then I want you to ask her out on a date. And I want you to get on the phone, make reservations at a very, very nice place. On that night of the date, I want you to dress up, and I want you to take your mother out to dinner. And I want you to be very respectful in opening the doors for her and pulling out the chair as she is being seated. And then I want you to pay for that dinner with your own hard-earned money. Now, you think through that for a moment. When you're thinking about restoring that which is broken, that may become a great way of discipline, of where it's a training mode, it's a training process of how to restore that which is broken. Instead of just being grounded to your room and not going out on Friday nights with our friends, it may be a better way of handling that situation. It's just thinking through how that all of this works. Discipline is about restoring. That's what it's about. Let me just quickly hit this last thing. Number 3, it's being intentional when it comes to connecting faith with family. I don't know how in the world you could be an effective parent without being a praying parent. You know, I have spent much time in prayer in raising our children. Kay has spent much time in prayer. And what we have found is that in prayer you find guidance and wisdom from God. You find incredible wisdom from the Word of God just spending time in prayer. You know, when Kay found out that she was expecting all 3 times, that in those 9 months, I would go to the church at 6 o'clock every morning, get off in the corner of that auditorium, just there in the darkness by myself, and I would pray and pray and pray for that unborn child. I'd never seen them, I had never met them, but I knew that God was forming, and that child was being created in the womb. And I prayed over those children, and I prayed for them every single day that, God, you would protect them physically. God, protect them. Lord, help me to know how to be a father. Help Kay to be a mother. God, help us to raise these kids. There's a purpose for their life. And I prayed, and I prayed, and I prayed for them. You know, another thing that you'll find is that in raising our kids in our home and in your home, there will always be those hurtful moments. It'll be those moments that will alarm you, that will frighten you, and that your child is going off in a direction that you're not so sure about, and you feel very, very uneasy. Maybe it's when your teenager now has graduated from high school, and they're in college, and they start dating someone, and you know it's not right for them, and you've tried to talk to them, but walls go up, and you can't do anything more. It's in those very tough moments that, as we were raising kids, that I've done many times. And it's my Santa Fe loop. And what I mean by that is that I'll just go get in my car and I'll just take off on I-25 and I'll drive all the way to Santa Fe, make the loop, and come all the way back an hour and a half, but it's my prayer drive. There have been many times that I have bombarded heaven as I have driven that all the way to Santa Fe and back, and just going to the highway and saying, God, I need you. I need your intervention. I need you to take care of what I cannot take care of. God, protect my child, protect my son, protect their future. And I mean, just bombarding heaven. And I'm telling you, every time I have felt the presence of God, the power of God, and God will do what you cannot do in your child's life. It's all about prayer. You know, something else that I've been asked many, many times about, and that is, you know, how do you do family devotions? Well, we just bombed out on that. We didn't do very well at that. And you know, some of you may do very well at that. I could never, ever get it to work right. And so we never did family devotions. But what we did is that we integrated everything in our home around God and around the house of God. And that our children were highly involved in church. It wasn't about church attendance. It was about church involvement. They were involved in children's ministry, student ministries, fine arts, going to camps, going to conventions, being in missions, and going on missions trips. I mean, whatever it was where we were highly, highly involved in ministry. And it was just a thing of where we connected them, we connected our family in that kind of thing. The other thing is the importance of just gathering everyone at the end of the day and having a prayer time. And where right before bedtime that the family all gathers. And everyone goes into one bedroom, jumps on the bed, all pray together. And I've talked so many times about how often I would lay my hand upon them and I would pray. I would speak things into existence, speaking that they would be world changers, speaking that they would be great influencers. And you know, when you try to capture this holy Woodward moment every night. And as we gather in the bedroom's glowing, and the glory of God is coming down in little halos over all of our children's heads. And, you can kind of get that picture. But let me give you the real picture. The real picture is gathering all of those kids when they're young into one bedroom to pray for them. And they're climbing on top of each other, and one is pinching the other one, and one is screaming, and one starts crying, and then you know how boys are, and then one lets one go, and everyone's fanning, and it's running from the room and can't breathe, and you're standing at the doorway like, what's the use? I mean, this is absolute chaos. We're just trying to pray together. And that's the real picture. But it's the consistency of pulling them together. And there are times that you feel the presence of God, that you hear their voice, you hear their request, you find where their heart is, and that God will do amazing things in their lives. It's just a great connection. It's a great responsibility. It's just the joy of life in having kids. But the responsibility is overwhelming at times. Be intentional. Don't let life happen. Don't let things just drift. You make things happen. Let me end with this. Everybody has a story. It's crazy. I mean, the amount of people that I go to lunch with, I'm sitting there with, visiting with, everybody has a story. So often, as I'm listening to someone, they'll go all the way back to their childhood, and they'll tell the story of how they were raised, what they experienced, what they went through. Everybody has a story. One day, think about this. One day, your child will have a story. One day, they will sit somewhere, and across the table, they'll tell the story that they experienced. And what's the story going to be? That's what rattles me. As a father, as a grandfather, it rattles me. Because I don't want one day to go by that I waste. It's going by too fast. I want every day to count. I want every day to be intentional. I want every day to be about leading them in the right direction. I'd like to ask you to bow your heads, and I want to pray with you. And if you're a parent, if you hope to be a parent, maybe you're expecting today, maybe you're a grandparent, then I just want to pray over you. And I want to ask that God would help us to be more intentional than we've ever been. Father, I ask that in the name of Jesus, Lord, I pray that at this moment that you would help us, Lord, to just refocus and bring everything back into clarity. That, Lord, that I've fallen into the habit loop, low brain activity. In other words, that I've lost my drive and I've lost my passion of what I want for my children. Lord, today, shaking that off. Lord, today I'm going to be intentional once again. And I'm going to focus and look into their eyes and zero in on them. It's not about me and my time. It's about them. It's about me molding and shaping and leading and training and coaching. Father, I pray, help us as parents to be the best. Father, I pray that right now that we're all encouraged, that we have the help of the Holy Spirit. We have the help of our great God. That, Lord, that when we don't know what to do, you can lead us and guide us. So, Lord, let us be the best that we can be. And God, I ask for a blessing upon our homes, upon our marriages, and upon our children. And I thank you, Lord, for that. And in Jesus' name we pray. And everyone said, amen, amen. God bless you guys.